So as we gather here today, both offline and face-to-face, which is great, and also online, I would just really also like to acknowledge that we are gathering here face-to-face on the lands of the Muwinina people of Nipaluna, Hobart, but I also want to extend that acknowledgement to all Palawa and Pakana people of Lutruwita, Tasmania. It is a real privilege to be here today. I also respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and I extend my respect to all Australian Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander and First Nations people here and also in the audience more broadly today. So we're very, very fortunate today to welcome Nigel Helyer as our first speaker to kick off the Art Forum. Nigel is an Australian-based sculptor and sound artist with a national and international reputation for his large-scale sonic installations, environmental sculpture and media projects. Much of his practice is actively interdisciplinary, and so he often incorporates his creative practice with scientific research and development. And in the talk today, he'll introduce a number of different works that explore visualization and sonification of scientific research across a range of different domains. I'm very excited to hear gene music. So Nigel has been a visiting professorial fellow and artistic director at the University of New South Wales. He's held a number of honorary and visiting scholar positions at several institutions, including Stanford University and the University of Western Australia. He's currently an honorary professor in art, culture and media at Macquarie University, and he's the co-founder of Sound Culture and a past fellow of the Australia Council, and he's won numerous awards, including the Helen Lemke National Sculpture Award. So it's really great to have him here today. Just also a heads up that he is going to be here for the week, and you will be seeing Nigel working away downstairs in the workshop with Murray Antil. So for any students that are interested in popping by, I'm sure Nigel will be very happy to talk to you about anything that you might want to follow up about the talk, and he'll also be quite happy, I'm sure, to show you the tests that he's been doing with some of the sound sculptures, which are sort of visualizing data in a three-dimensional form. But I won't hog any more time. I will pass over to Nigel. And again, thank you so much for joining us today.
So I'm just pressing that button, right? Good. Thank you, Sonia, for that rather nice introduction. It certainly sounds good on paper, doesn't it? But and thank you all for coming along. It's very nice to be back in Hobart again. I've been coming here from an awful long time, ever since the art school was up on top of Mount Nelson, actually. So can someone tell me how long ago that was? How many? Oh, I was only 3 then. Can you all hear me okay? Because I bit louder, you mean? Yes, I kind of mumble and tend to be very quiet. Okay, we're going to start. I've called this Sounding Out, for want of a better title, but it's in some ways a sort of a motley collection of works which all engage with sound in one way or another, sometimes in the context of large public artworks, sometimes in the context of kind of microbiology or very small things, let's put it that way. Sometimes kind of audio narratives, human voice, sometimes musicalizations of data and things. So it's a little bit of a romp in a way. So there we go. So the first one I want to talk about, and I've probably got too many slides, so I may have to skip some things. And if I see any people fainting in the audience, I might have to skip the whole lot. But Gene Music was one of those projects that was initiated during a residency in Symbiotica in 2003, where I thought it would be a great idea to, I was thinking about, there were some musicians who were looking at DNA and turning DNA into music. You know, like this is what AIDS sounds like, which of course is silly, but I realized no one had ever done it the other way round, putting music into biological systems and using biology to do a remix, basically. I thought, well, that should be easy enough. I spent 4 months doing microbiology, learned a lot about microbiology, and found I ran out of time and money. It happened again in Bloemfontein for the Vifus Festival in 2013, where I worked between a music academy and a microbiology lab. We got much, much closer, but didn't quite do the whole biological cycle. And then at the Institute for Molecular Medicine in Lisbon in 2016, they wanted me to try again. And we finally did it. So these are, you know, artists looking like scientists or scientists looking like artists. Just playing around with some, this is way back in 2003. I borrowed Gary's outfit, as you can see. This is in Bloemfontein, where we actually did do quite a lot of work, and this is one where the sound doesn't work, sorry. That is a Khoi San guy singing a traditional song, and this is a kind of an analysis, pitch analysis, that I used to sort of develop the project. When I was out, the guys I was working with in a kind of basically a refugee camp out there, I found that there'd been an explorer, a British explorer 200 years before, who'd actually been recording, or notating, of course, not recording, some of the traditional songs. So as part of the project, we included that music in it. So very, very basically, what I was trying to do and what this project does is take musical notation, translate it into DNA, synthesize that DNA. I don't do that, a lab does that, and you just give them a lot of money and they send you a drop of clear liquid that big back. Pop that inside what's called the plasmid DNA of a bacteria. The plasmid is a circular piece of DNA. You can use an enzyme to open it up, put your DNA in, snap it back together. It's all done. It's like cooking. And then you cook it, amplify it, and then you subject it to all forms of torture, UV light, nasty chemicals. The bacteria tend to mutate when you do that. Then you come back to it, you go, please open up, grab the DNA out again, and then you go back to your original little table that you've designed and turn it back into notes. So, you know, don't try it at home. But anyway, and this is kind of the thing you get out of doing that process. This, go about it. Thank you. I'm not going to play many of the sound clips are very long, because some of them are like half an hour. That's where I was working in Platfontein. Kind of not suboptimal conditions for biology and music, really, but an interesting process. And here's some of the code that was generated from recording people singing. And those little blue bits are the places where certain enzymes will work. So the one in the project in South Africa, we never finished the biological cycle, just ran out of time, ran out of money. But it's common practice in labs to do it in silico, as they say. You model the outcome. Here's the final one. I worked on one of my favorite songs, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Bye, Toto. Here's one of the conversion tables. With bad typography, I noticed. It gets you. So you got 64 codons, and you can do. You can assign notes. In the end, I had to assign bars of the song because the lab kept finding that because music's so repetitive, the DNA kept calling up into basically snot, and they called me and said, "What the hell are you doing? Why is it doing this? And why is it so repetitive?" And I said, "Well, it's music." So I did it at the level of the bar, which meant I also got the lyrics. And so it was more of a kind of cut up in the end on this particular project. And I got back 50 blocks of DNA. I've only ever decoded a few of them because it takes me about 4 days to do it.
And that I heard of if birds fly and happy little bluebirds fly me. Happy little bluebirds fly me over the rainbow land that I heard of.
And it would seem a very simple thing to get a pianist and a performer to do one of those kind of mashups, but because it's such a simple song and it's so well known, it's just irritatingly difficult. So those have actually toured quite a lot. The lab that I work with also works with a cultural organization, and they do touring shows internationally. So those are gone all over the place, funnily enough, but I never made any money. This is work I've been doing with IMAS since, it says 2011, which is true. Working with, mainly with Professor Mary Ann Lee on southern elephant seals who have got biologging. There's one there. Biologging trackers. That's the latest in Antarctic chic. And what happens is these critters they weigh about 4 tons. They're about 6 meters long, the big ones. They'll dive 2,000 meters underwater. They'll stay down for 2 hours. They'll come back for 2 minutes, breathe, and go back down again. And so when they come up, they ping the satellite with all it's not biological data, it's oceanographic data, turbidity, salinity, temperature, all that kind of stuff. And it's one of the only ways that ocean scientists can get information about what it's like under the sea ice, because you can't really go that far down under sea ice. It'd be dangerous. And so here's one of them. Oh, come on. I'm going to go back because he didn't do what he's supposed to do. No, he's not going to do it for me. And here's one of the stations on the island, southern side of the island. And so we're able to sort of generate these tracks. And the idea there was, most of the data that scientists get and publish ends up in this kind of graphical form, and often only in kind of a two-dimensional, not that many values. There's no real kind of gestalt of all the values. And I was thinking there must be some way of having multiple streams of data being read simultaneously. I thought about it, and I said to Marianne, I think we need this kind of real-time, rapid network that looks at the data and transforms it. They're called musicians, because that's what their brains are like. And so we went to see the con, and they agreed. So what we did, we made these animated maps from the data. So these kind of big spikes are actually islands. So the z-axis is, this is an undersea scape. The z-axis is sort of amplified, and the things on the left, you can see there, are actual seal tracks, and the little lines that come down is where they've come up and pinged. They do these amazing, like 2,000 to 3,000 kilometer transits across when they're feeding. And the other thing we did was we turned that same data, so we've got the data making the maps, and the data also we turned into various types of graphical scores and work with 4 musicians. So this should be play. Yeah. We asked them to. We ran them through a whole series of different combinations of like 1 musician per animal or 4 musicians for 1 animal, different values, and switching around. So we kind of diced it up every way we could think of. Here's another type of graphical score. We also did lots of different types of graphical scores. And so there was a series of concerts in Hobart, and also in Sydney. We opened Science Week for the Powerhouse Museum one year, and just to kind of quickly loop back to the current. That's why I'm working on a project on the Tasman Fracture Marine Park with a team of about 8 scientists. We've been doing it the last 2 years. Commissioned by Parks Tasmania to look at the essentially what I call the productivity of the ocean. So looking at the prey-predator relationships and networks, and doing a small exhibition in the Mawson Gallery in mid-September, which I hope you can all come along to. Going to go to a slightly different area now. Oratorio, it's actually called Oratorio for a Million Souls. It was a project done for European Capital of Culture in 2018 in Friesland, which is part of the Netherlands. But it was I worked with bees and bee architectures, if you like, in 3 botanical gardens. One in Leeuwarden in Friesland, another one in Germany, in Emden, which is Ostfriesland, and another one in Oldenburg in Germany, all in botanical gardens. And I had originally just wanted to do one really, really big oratorio with 20 beehives, which were like sensor hives with microphones and data counters and things like that in. But that didn't happen, and partly because we were in a project where they wanted to do an international link, so it had to be more than one. So, as it sort of says there, the main objective was this idea of kind of, I suppose in some way, kind of an interspecies empathy, where someone can actually enter into the sort of sonic world of a beehive and become totally immersed in it. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So it's just a kind of parallel between human and bee cultures, if you like. Here's our little visualization of what might be happening. No sound, strange, but still. So basically, I made a series of these what look like African huts with bee ports, bee entries, and we'll skip out of this because it goes on. And I work with not honeybees but bumblebees, because Holland has I think the fourth largest supplier of fruits and vegetables in Europe, and everything's grown in greenhouses and everything's pollinated by bumblebees, who are unpaid slaves, and you can buy them from bee manufacturing factories in boxes, by nests of them. And I linked in with an agricultural university that had some bee sensor technology, and we also had a program with about 100 schools in the area who were doing pollen monitoring by counting bumblebees. So it's early days, building a framework in one of the botanical gardens. It was very, very agricultural, woven willow, and a material they called leam. It's basically like adobe. How to make a bee system. That's kind of a silly diagram. We had microphones, tiny DPA microphones in the bee entrance, so you could detect whether a bee was coming in or going out and record it. And also, I developed a very basic but actually quite functional piezo soundboards inside the hives, so we could record bee activity. The project was also tasked with creating a musical work for large brass ensembles in each of the 3 locations. So we had to make music from it too. So here's a little synth version of some of the music. Play the real thing, we would say. So the music was actually generated from a palette of actual real sounds that I recorded in the hives, and the bee activity data we got from the counters, and that was linked incoming and outgoing. And we had an onboard computer system in each hive and a 4-channel surround sound system built into it, and the system simply mixed the actual data of movement with real audio from the ports where the bees came in and out, and the audio inside the beehives, and turned some things into little musical sequences over that sound as well. So on the debut day, this happened in 3 different locations. 3 brass bands got around their little hive things, little hut things, and we had a visual and audio satellite link up, and I never want to do that again. It's just like so horribly complicated. But 3 bands played all the parts simultaneously. So kind of silly idea, but it sort of worked, luckily. And kind of, I like the huts more than anything else, I think. We planted a bee garden on top. Here's a bee port where the bees going in, and there were 2 of these things on the right-hand side. They're the hives with the recording devices inside them. Oh, and the other thing is the project had to last at least 3 years, which when you're making mud huts in Northern Europe is a tall order, but they did. They actually lasted. And here's the actual. It starts off really slowly because bees in the morning are very quiet, and they get towards midday, 1 o'clock, where it's warmer, they're more active, and then it tapers down because they only fly. They're sighted flyers, so they only fly during the day. I'll stop that there because just one little anecdote. The producer, our festival producer, was very keen that we stuck to the data. You know, you're going to sonify data, you have to be fairly rigorous and not kind of futz around with it. So I said, fine, that's what I'm going to do. And gave him he was actually a composer and a theatre guy, gave him the scores, and he said, oh God, you can't give this to the band, because then the bands play umpa music. And I said, well, you know, if I don't give them the music, they won't be able to rehearse and we won't be able to do the concert. And he said, yeah, but let me think about it. And he kept thinking about it, kept saying, no, you can't give this to the band. And I was going along to rehearsals and getting to know my local band. And I went to Germany and met the other bands. And in the end, I thought, I'm just going to give them the score. And 2 weeks later, he was there at rehearsals glaring at me. But, you know, he relaxed when he realized that the band hadn't freaked out completely. Still, that was funny. This one is a No Man's Landing. Again, is a large public event, and was a really collaborative one. It was 5 artists, 5 international artists, 3 international curators. I won't name them all because I'm going to make a mistake. But it was done for Sydney Harbour Foreshore Authority, which I don't think exists anymore, the Royal Triennale in Duisburg, and for the Merchant City Festival in Glasgow in Scotland. And basically, we built a floating acoustic theatre in 2 parts that could open and close. And I built a system. I often work with, instead of speakers, I work with these things called audio drivers that you basically like kind of things about this big and can plug it onto a wall, and you shake the wall and the wall becomes the speaker. So these are, I might just show you, yeah. The objects are made of double skin ply, and I attached these speakers, 20 of them, in 2 levels, so you could do a 20-channel dynamic mix. I just play this, it actually makes more sense than me talking. It's how to build one anyway. So you get about 40 people in it, and the kind of sound event went for about half an hour, and there was a live performance, singing involved in that as well. And the work was basically about the narrative of a soldier going through the trauma of World War One, and the kind of aftermath of that. It was multilingual. It was in about 8 languages because of the kind of participants in World War One. So it was a complex audio work. What happened there? Oh yeah, okay. Another video which explains it a bit better than I can.
1 red coat, 1 tin miss, 1 tin miss colour, 1 shirt, 1 socks, hair. So,
Interpretation of a soldier's experience during wartime.
toothbrush, one card, one cap, teeth, one label, one disc, linen, one sheet, one roof, one wreath, tin off, one towel, one pestle, one holder, one razor, one razor case, one file.
So it flew off to Germany.
Wenn du lange in einen Abgrund blickst, blickt der Abgrund auch in dich hinein.
That's your Nietzsche quote for the day. And it was installed in a Eisenbahnhafen in Germany, in an iron loading harbour in an industrial. Oh, Duisburg is quite. Okay, so this is in Glasgow. This is indoors. So that was such a beautiful song. I just kind of gave me chills, and the girl who sang it worked at that space, and it was her first language, Scottish Gaelic, and she was very nervous about singing. It took me days to get her to sing it, and I said afterwards, "That's such a beautiful song. I'm sure that's a love song." She said, "No, it's actually about an old lady getting the cow out of a mud swamp." So, it's very romantic, Scotland. Flipping to completely different thing. This is much more a kind of music culture, and I've been working with the Bundanon Trust, which is Arthur Boyd's bequest to the nation. It's actually the 8th national collection in Australia. I've been working with them for about 5 years on an ARC-funded kind of art science, looking at environment from a cultural perspective as well. And they have an annual festival, and this was the last. I did 4 really quite big projects, and I did a really small project, and this is the really small project. But it was about, I was interested in our relationship, especially our capacity to sing and to speak in relationship to birds. And Australia is kind of nominally the place where bird song originated. That's the claim. We have louder birds and more of them than anyone else, and that kind of the theory is it kind of migrated out from an Australian centre. But also we've got this wonderful notion of mimicry, and musicians like Messiaen, who was very interested in birds, wrote this wonderful work called The Catalogue of Birds, Catalogue de Oiseaux. And but also, I mean, we imitate birds, but birds are actually very good at imitating us. So I can skip the text. So all I did for this is a very light-hearted piece where I made a series of birdhouses. One set, it's birds imitating humans, and the other set is humans imitating birds. And it's just set in that landscape in some of the forest, that sort of Shoalhaven, which is where I live. I live in this area. And hopefully this is going to play. Go, go. Oh, come on. Please play. Yeah. Sorry for the crappy video, but
I can talk, can fly. I can talk.
it's a lyrebird doing a car alarm. That's Messiaen. I think you get the idea. And then following on from that, another little kind of Messiaen, almost a joke. Well, it's one of the somber quartet for the end of time, and I've done a tongue-in-cheek version of it because it rains a lot down there, out there rather, and I was thinking about how difficult that G music had been and how expensive it was, you know, and I thought maybe I could just get some biological colleagues to work with me that were easier to wrangle, and I kept finding my mail in my mailbox was being completely eaten by snails, like completely eaten, you know, like bank statements where there's nothing left. Well, there is nothing left in the bank, but there was nothing left of the envelopes. So I got the score of the Quartet for the End of Time, which is quite long and in multiple 4 parts, of course, and fed it. I had a kind of snail farm and fed the score to it. And unfortunately, it's never been, I'm going to skip that. It's never been played, but I've been trying to get, whoa, too fast. Been trying to get someone to play this kind of modified score where they play, but they can't play the holes. But it's a kind of conceptual one, just thrown in. How am I doing for time? 44. I better skip the next one, I think. Sorry. We're going to flash through this. It's a nice one, but too bad. Come on. It should be. I might have to talk too much about this one because hopefully everyone in the room has seen it. So this was. Has anyone not seen this? I don't want to teach my grandmother to suck eggs. So you've all seen it. It's good. Okay. So I think you got the basic idea was kind of looking at a context which has had a very difficult, violent, and contested history, which remains as you all know, as we all know, kind of unresolved. And I just thought to use the ship, Frankton ship, as a kind of sign of European settlement, but in the sense of a kind of wreck of history. And obviously the canoe, the indigenous canoe, as a kind of high-tech version of the original bark canoes. In fact, one of the guys who built it is an indigenous guy. The sort of deal I had with the commission, well, I suggested that everything was made here, local craftsmen, local wood, and local prices, unfortunately. But the working with the city council was interesting because I hadn't realised the level of anxiety and political tension. I was put under embargo several times, like, you can't mention this, or you can't launch this, or you can't do that, because it's well contested.
Mathina was now so excited and so free. It was as if she were tumbling through clouds.
So I turned that off. You all know who that is, I guess. There was also a lot of anxiety about whether the project would sit well with the community. And I think it was interesting to have the smoking ceremony at the opening. Is that lady still your mayor? Or is she gone? You know, still the mayor? Good, she seemed to be okay. The smoking ceremony I was quite relieved that happened, because it did seem to help ease the work into a sort of public acceptance. It's Tony Brown, who's one of my two mentors. The other of my mentors is wearing a red hat over there. And thank you, Greg. I wouldn't have survived this experience without you. And some of the technical drawings. And too many photographs of it, because I actually kind of like it. I'm going to flip through these, because I'm going to try and show the last piece. Come on, go. Yeah, I told you, way too many photographs of this one. Okay, Sandus Maris. This is last piece. Last couple of years, well, I've had more than that because it got stuttered through COVID as well. Been working with the Water Research Lab of the University of New South Wales, and I had been working with them for some time before that on another project. And this is a kind of concept I'm quite interested in, this idea of art is science made flesh. And, you know, that was written in 1918 by Jean Cocteau. But for me, it's actually one of the best ways of thinking about how art and science might be related, is that the art side of it actually makes the science palpable in a way that it's not simply digits or diagrams, that it is embodied in the sense that, you know, flesh, and it's in flesh, if you like, and it kind of makes us realize that the sort of questing and imagination and intellect that's within science is the same species that's within art. They're not two different things. So I work with icols. What is an icol and where do they live? That's an icol. The Australian East Coast has got about 23% of the world's icols, intermittently closed and opening lakes and lagoons. they're the canary in the mine in terms of climate change, because these lakes and lagoons, which sometimes break through that sandy berm into the ocean, sometimes they're closed and the water level goes up and they become more like freshwater ecologies. They're affected by both terrestrial events of river flow, rainfall, storms, and by oceanic events, high tides, wave action, storms, and of course low pressure systems, which raises water levels everywhere. So we all know about that. So I'm going to click over that. We now know where they were. So this project, I worked with a scientist, scientist in the Water Research Lab, looking at the images taken by these satellites, which have been going around the globe for about 50 years. And so we have data sets, or Earth imaging data sets, that go back that time of covering the whole globe. And basically, it's a kind of, I kind of got interested in that because it was a kind of data archaeology. You think of a biological system or an environmental system that no one really paid any attention to, when these cycles are open and closed. I mean, local people living there might have noticed it, but there's never been any real scientific mapping of those things. There's no way of getting that data back, except all these satellite images contain a wide spectrum. And in the infrared spectrum, you can look at the images and figure out whether water was flowing, how deep it was, how wide the channels were. So it's exactly what we did. We basically made animations and videos. The original kind of idea was, or the request was, to make an animated video from the satellite data of 4 different sites on the New South Wales coast for an international conference of coastal engineering that happened in the end of 22 in Sydney. So there were like 1,000 scientists there. So that was the deal. Then the proposal was, would you please do an exhibition, make some more video stuff, which I did. Then would you like to do a concert, which I did. And the exhibition is currently being reshown at the Jervis Bay Maritime Museum in a slightly different form. So we had 4 sites, turning them into these kind of going back through time. And this is the kind of the strange attractor thing, where you get, these are actual traces of channels and flows, and they're overlaid, they kind of accumulate one on top of another to make these kind of pattern or nested patterns. And that nice poem by Emily Dickinson, which is kind of goes with the, as part of the exhibition, actually, was one of the exhibition statements. The motto, keep it simple, stupid, because that's the best way things don't break. And I'm not a trained musician, which is sometimes good and sometimes bad. When I'm transposing, it's bad. But so what I basically do is, you can see down the left-hand side, there's a lot of data, and it would go on for several meters below that. And then I, started off just charting it out by hand and assigning notes to the values. I did automate it later, but this is the initial sketch. Very badly drawn staves, but if it works, do it. And gets recorded as monophonic piano music, because the data is monophonic, single point data, and then some shots of the show in that show was in New South Wales University, one of the galleries there. And then I worked with the New Music Quartet. Here's some of the some of the data charted as radar chart, animated radar charts, and I'll play a little bit of this. It's about a half an hour long concert in 5 movements. I'm going to stop it there because, as I said, it's half an hour long. But we might have a few minutes for any questions. This is the microphone.
So thank you so much, Nigel. We have a question over here.
We do. How do you test the ideas on a smaller scale before such big productions begin?
I don't. I mean, like the really big ones, like No Man's Landing, we workshopped. We would, the three curators and the 5 artists got together and went off on a retreat and workshopped ideas, and we did go and visit sites and things like that. And so that was a kind of slow evolution, but it wasn't ever tested at a smaller scale apart from in that sort of process. And once we committed to it, it just went full scale.
If anyone has to leave, please feel free to go. I know some have classes.
I guess I'm coming from a similar question, but with the architectural elements of things, there's a lot of, building and planning that goes into that. Like, how did you find people to work with to do that? Or were they already part of your team, or?
I suppose over time, I get to know people, work with them. So from the musical side, there's a couple of people who, if I get, say, a commission, I can commission them to help me. What I didn't show was a whole bunch of things which have automatic computer serving files from sensors or things like that. I basically don't do that kind of stuff, so I'll pay someone to do it. And with the drawings, I mean, the engineering drawings, it's usually for like a public art commission, and there's a budget. And it's actually kind of difficult to find people who are sympathetic to art projects in the sense, because it's a slightly different mentality to designing a bridge, But I've worked with, just civil engineer type people, and some of them are okay. I did a big piece for the Sydney Sculpture Walk, and the engineer I found was actually a patron of the MCA, so he was kind of culture friendly. That's often the kind of, you get a bit of buy-in from someone. They're not sort of, I mean, some people are downright hostile, so I don't want to do that kind of crap, But some people just love it. So there's one or two kind of go-to people in terms of the drawings, but finding someone who's really a really good one. I found it quite difficult because people move, they go away. Yeah, so that can be hard. I've resisted learning CAD and stuff myself, but actually, at the moment, I'm trying to get better at it, just for simple things. Yeah. So that's not real advice, but it's, you know, if you've got the money, you can pay for it. But
Sven, can you hear us?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Nigel, for a great presentation. My question was about the dome that you showed on in Sydney and subsequently, was it in Germany?
Yeah.
I was interested in the fact that the first iteration was on water and subsequently it was put on a hard ground. Did that affect the way that the audience approached that dome and then experience the presentation at all?
Yes. You can hear me okay?
Yes, great.
Yeah. Oh, okay,
you.
good. In fact, it was shown 3 times, and the first 2 times were on water. So it was on water in Sydney Harbour and then in a harbour in Duisburg in Germany. The 3rd time it was shown inside a large theatre space, an old tram station in Glasgow. And as I said, in a sense, we were kind of reluctant to do that. And partially because the thing only just fit in the space, and we had to reduce its opening and closing dimension. But we didn't really have an alternative. The city wasn't going to allow us to put in the Clyde. And so we were able to control the light, and we were able to control the sound much more. So we could have additional lights outside the dome, so we could make the thing completely black, or we could turn the lights up. I could have speakers outside in the background, as it were, to add another layer of atmospheric sound. And the first 2 times we used this type of military tents as a briefing room. People had to wear their life jackets, and they were told by the assistants, you know, what they kind of prepped a little bit. They were given a mini intro briefing to set the context, and then they were sent out on those floating pontoons. We kind of replicated that in Glasgow, where we had, before you entered the actual theatre space, we used the same type of military tent and a kind of little tunnel to go into either side, where people were briefed in a similar way. They didn't have to wear life jackets, though, obviously. But so we, as I say, there were some disadvantages. We had to change the work because of the context, but also it was a lot more kind of control of the environment. So it gave us some other things to work with. So it's kind of, swings and roundabouts in the end. And sometimes we kind of thought that the one in the theatre was better in some ways than the one on water, although it was actually kind of a spectacular experience to walk out on a floating structure like that. So, yeah, swings and roundabouts.
Thank you. Great, thank you.
All right, so thanks everyone. We are going to wrap it up now because we are just after 1 o'clock. But so thanks again to Nigel, and feel free to come down if you want to continue chatting individually to Nigel. To all our online viewers, thank you so much for joining us. And, you know, you can be able to contact Nigel via the website that you can see, the email, the website address below. So again, thanks everyone, and thank you, Nigel.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you.